Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Speedrun Insider. My name is CJitsallGewd. Thank you so much for joining me this week, as you do every week. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, share, tell your friends, tell your neighbors' kids. They have little fingers and they may have a hard time pushing the buttons. I just want to thank everyone again for all the love and support for the All-Stars episodes. They may come back in the future. I hope that they do. They'll probably be offered as some incentive at one of our charity events, vis-a-vis, maybe Speed Doxathon or Launch Party, one of those, the Fishing Jamboree, which I don't know how I feel about it, but it's a thing that we're doing. So all of those things that might be coming up, if we do those events again. The Fishing Jamboree one we're definitely doing. I don't know if we're doing the other events. But keep those on. They'll probably be an incentive in the future. Thank you to everyone that has made the Ashwin episode the most downloaded audio podcast that we have done to date. That is a very exciting. We're really happy. I'm really proud of that episode. I think you should all listen to that episode if you haven't already. But enough about other guests and other times and other numbers. We have a guest today, and I gotta say, I'm actually looking forward to this one. I think this is going to be a really fun conversation. I did my little bit of research, and I'm both fascinated and excited. And so without further ado, my guest for today is Kefka14. What's going on, bud?
Hello, how you doing today?
Oh, I'm living the dream. I can't complain.
That's good. Most of the same. It's
yeah.
been a rough couple of years, but here we are. it's 2022, and the world's still turning,
Yeah, exactly. As far as I'm aware, the Earth continues to orbit the sun. We're about, a few millennia away, or maybe many millennia away, from the heat death of the sun, at which point we will be long but dust in the wind, and there will be no record of either of us, save for this podcast. So, existential dread is at a minimum, That's where I'm at.
I've kind of always imagined that, the inevitable heat death will be sort of like when you glitch out of bounds and fall infinitely into a void and never respawn. It's kind of like that, it's just this infinite nexus of a floaty feeling.
It's a I don't know if you ever watched Homestar Runner, but there was the Teen Girl Squad, and one time it was super old internet, but there's one of them where the girls go, "When you fall down a bottomless pit, you die of starvation." And I had to think about it, and I was like, yeah.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. At some point, do you feel like you're still falling? It's not like if you're never gonna hit the ground, do you just get used to falling?
I mean, I feel like wouldn't the blood rush to your head like long before you starve to death? With that much continual G-force or something? Like, I don't know.
I think you'd pass out. I think you'd definitely pass out. Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, like if you fell for 72 hours, just straight down. I don't know.
If you could make a hole like through the Earth's crust, if you could make a hole that you like fell in, and then you like didn't go through the Earth, obviously, but you like went through the thin layer of the crust, right? And it somehow was a straight line, would you like eventually? I guess you would hit the side of it at some point, right? Because like gravity and shit. Like, you'd eventually, like, not fall and come out the other side. You would, like, stop somewhere in the middle.
I mean, you would have to stop somewhere in the middle because of gravity. But wouldn't... Here's a question. If you went to the exact center of the Earth and it was just, like, a point you could exist in, what would that feel like? Would you, like, get crushed into a ball? Would you... I don't... There's a lot of questions with all of this whole concept.
You would definitely go full Cronenberg.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You'd be like Mushman, yeah.
I was picturing something like that super boss in Final Fantasy IX, Ozma. You become that.
Yeah. What was the... Do you ever see Real Monsters?
Oh, it's been a long time, but yeah.
The dude that has to hold his eyes with his hands?
Yeah.
That's what you look like?
Yeah.
Is there a show that exists in your mind that you're like, I loved this as a kid and I don't know why? I actually can't tell you. Like, not like younger kid shit, right? Like, cause like, you know, I used to rock the Barney. I get why that show makes kids like that show, right? But I'm thinking like a show that maybe was like for an age group above that you're like, man, what was the curb appeal for this thing?
I actually have a hot take on that one, and I still it's sort of divided because I still see the appeal even to me, but I'm kind of fooling myself into thinking that I'm still like not into it necessarily, but that I enjoy it because every time I've tried to as an adult, I'm just like, ugh, you know. Dragon Ball Z.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really. And I really like the show. I love the vibe. I will always love the show. Like, it has a special place in my heart, and always will. But going back and trying to watch it now, something just feels so mundane. I don't redundant.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's like a feeling I get that just doesn't make me feel good at all about it. Really weird.
I felt like if I was able to go back and watch Dragon Ball, I would enjoy it more, because Dragon Ball is less about like power creep and power levels and is more about like it's like the whole different feeling. Like, it gives you a world, right? It's like, oh, this is like something that really happened and it was a big deal in the world. Or like, oh, this is a world where like there's just a dog man and he wears pajamas and he's evil and he's just a dog man, right? Or it's like, oh, this is the army. Like, Goku fights the Red Ribbon Army, right? And then it's like, even like the Saiyan Saga, IMO. I'm not trying to, take up all of the time. But the Saiyan Saga is like the one that best fits that.
It married the two ideas.
Yeah.
Very well.
And then they're like, okay, well, the biggest threat in the world right now isn't at Earth. It's at Namek. And I'm like, okay, new planet. Big potential. Obviously, then it took 2 years to kill Frieza. But, then it's like, okay, we're back on Earth. And the androids from the Red Ribbon Army are here. And I'm like, okay, we beat all of them, I guess. No, these are just androids. And then begins, like, the inevitable, like, redundancy, right?
Yeah, it was a slippery slope. And I pretty much have the same opinion. Like, Dragon Ball's great because there's a lot more of the right kind of exposition within the story, right? But then, sometime towards, like, the middle of the Frieza saga or so is when it started to sort of just go down a rabbit hole of just this eternal power loop sort of thing.
Yeah. Or like hey, almost kill me so that I can come back stronger. It's like,
or in some cases, kill me and then I'm going to come back stronger anyway. That was a thing.
Full on Obi-Wan.
Yeah, like... Because, I mean, Goku has been brought back to life, like, I don't know, more times than most characters, I would argue.
Oh, yeah. I loved, because when I was a kid, what was on TV was the Boo saga.
Yeah.
And so, like, it pissed me off because they'd show Dragon Ball in the afternoon. And so I watched all the way. I watched the Fusion saga. I watched the tournament arc, right? And then at some point, they wouldn't make new episodes, right? Like, the new episodes hadn't come out. So they'd restart the arc. So it's like, what is going to happen next time on Dragon Ball Z? And then it's like, oh, we're back to an episode that aired 3 months ago. I'm like, what? I have to rewatch it all again? It drove me fucking crazy.
And what was really wild was this weird gray area period where Adult Swim wasn't called Adult Swim. It was just like the stuff that came on at night on Cartoon Network. And you had like Space Ghost, Coast to Coast, and all that stuff. But occasionally they just trickle some random like adult-ish animes on there, like Cowboy Bebop Trigun,
Yes.
stuff like that. You know, Lupin the Third, just like throw it in there, and you would just be like, whoa, what's this? And it's 1 a.m. You're like sitting in your grandmother's living room eating a bowl of chicken noodle soup, staring at the TV, like, whoa, you know, it was an interesting time. And then Adult Swim came into being right around the time of like Aqua Teen Hunger Force, I think, and that's I don't know.
Aqua Teen Hunger Force is so. That show sounds like a show pitched by someone who was coked out of their fucking mind.
I don't
high as a fucking kite.
I don't disagree with that at all. The thing that gets me about it is it sounds like a playground rumor. Like if you described that show to a friend, they would be like, "No, you didn't see that. What are you talking about?"
It's like, what if there was a raunchy Happy Meal?
A raunchy Happy Meal.
It's so funny. I love Carl, right? Carl's my favorite character because he is just the straight man who lives next to food, right? And he is, no matter what, he just gets the shit end of the stick. I remember, did you ever see the hand banana episode?
I did not.
So they're making like clones, right? Because they're making pets. And so like, oh, we're going to make a dog, right? And the dog is like going to like, like stop the Frylock and, Master Shake and Meatwad from like doing their hijinks. But they do it, they make a dog based on Shake's hands, which are just like little yellow like banana type things. And so Meatwad's like, I'm gonna call him Hand Banana. And he's like a dog, except he only wants to rape Carl. What? The whole time. He's like, all I know is ball and good and rape. And it's like, what the fuck? And this is on television, right?
It is.
That's so bad. And then Carl makes his own dog, which is a dog with Carl's face, and he's like, I want my name to be Spaghetti. And he's like, okay, Spaghetti. And then Spaghetti's like, no, I'm with Hand Banana. We're gonna do stuff to you. It's like, what the that was on television. That was on the air.
Man, cartoons used to be able to get away with a lot more of, I don't know, not only adult jokes, but just some really weird, like, themes that, like, no way a kid will understand.
Yeah, no. And honestly, I think we've come far enough that, like, that stuff's not really funny. It's just shocking.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
I was saying this. I think, because one of my mom's favorite movies, it was her birthday, and someone got her one of her favorite movies on, like, Blu-ray. She only had it on VHS. It's the generational gap we're working with here. So, one of her favorite movies is The Birdcage. Are you familiar with The Birdcage?
I'm not. Tell me about it.
It is about... So, it's Robin Williams, okay, and Nathan Lane. And the premise is that they're a gay couple, and they have a nightclub, right? Or something to that effect. And they have... So, there's the guy's son, Robin Williams' son, is coming back, and he's going to introduce his girlfriend's parents to his parents, and so they have to pretend not to be gay, and so they like call like the birth mom, and it's like this whole charade, right? That plot doesn't even make sense today, right? Like hardly it makes sense. Like this whole elaborate charade around like pretending you're not gay so that you're to impress your girlfriend's parents, it doesn't even translate really, I think, into like modern day.
I mean, like that doesn't make it a bad movie, obviously.
No, it doesn't make it a bad movie. It's a really funny movie. And it's, it's Robin Williams and it's Nathan Lane and they're really funny. I don't think it makes it a bad movie, but it's a plot that doesn't translate. And so it's kind of like, well, you can't make that movie today, not because of any messaging or whatever else. You can't make that movie today because the plot doesn't make sense to modern tastes, right? It's the same thing with, like, I guess a better example would be like Three's Company. Like,
Ooh.
the whole joke about Three's Company is Jack is, they like, oh, well, it's uncouth for a man to have two women roommates. He's like, no, but I'm gay. And so every episode they're like, oh, we know you're, ding-a-ling-a-ling. And I'm like, oh. It's just a plot that doesn't hold up.
You were so there's this musical, very very unrelated but also related, called Victor Victoria.
Mm-hmm.
But basically the premise is there's this singer who she can't make it. She's just failing financially, more or less, and she decides to more or less dress up as a man pretending to be a woman. So like, so she essentially is playing I guess a transgender male. Like she decides to like make that her character. Keep in mind this movie was made or this musical was in like, I want to say somewhere between the 40s and 60s. So like, it doesn't hold up today either. Sort of what I was thinking, because now the concept of being transgender is not. I mean, it's normal. That's fine. Like, I don't know.
No, I agree. No, I mean, like, the reason that cross-dressing, not to get like too deep into this, right? But the reason that cross-dressing is a theme that runs from like as like a running joke in like male-centric comedy from like the 1930s until like really the early 2000s, it's like it comes from a place of like the worst thing that can happen to a man is that he's perceived as a woman. That's not my take. That's like the source of the humor.
Yeah, that's
right?
like the cultural implications of the humor for sure as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's one of these weird things where it's like
when you realize what's funny about it, you step back and you're like, yikes.
yeah, it's like,
yikes.
oh, this is funny because it's just, it's like Bosom Buddies. Bosom Buddies is a show about Tom Hanks, and whatever, being dressing up as a woman. It's like, that's the premise of the show. It's just like, it's kind of a bad premise. I mean, listen, it had like 2 seasons, right? So it's like, it made something. It made money, I guess.
More
it's just like
Firefly. Oh, sorry.
Got him.
Got
him.
Yeah.
For all the people that are getting and loving all of these media references, what are your thoughts on Firefly?
Oh no, I backed myself into a corner on this one. I've never watched it.
So me either. But I hate the fans
of it. Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's so good, you'd love it, and I'm like, bro, come on, I don't want to watch a show that has 13 episodes.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to fuck with it.
Sounds like a good way to either A, not enjoy myself, or B, get very sad when I do enjoy myself. Because there's nothing left.
It's like, what is the upside of falling in love with a show that has like 2.5 seasons? This is a great example.
I thought of the question you asked earlier. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just thought of this. You mentioned a show I watched as a kid that doesn't hold up as an adult. The Donkey Kong Country cartoon.
Yes! Oh my god!
That's a very good example of one. Because you watch it now and it's just like, oh my god, this is just like very bad songwriting over very early CGI. And that's all
and it was mocap.
Yeah. I mean, it looked great for the time, obviously, but you watch it back and there's almost no plot substance whatsoever in a lot of like areas. It's just like song, and then they walk around for a second and some sort of joke happens about DK being hungry, then song, and then, I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my god. And I loved that show as a kid.
Oh, so did I. Ate it up.
And it was really hard to watch because it was at a weird time for me.
It came on right after the Beetlejuice cartoon. If that tells you anything.
Yeah. Oh my god. We're right there. We're living the dream together. We're reminiscing about programming blocks. And then I remember it went to like UPN and I was like, it was like early in the morning, and it would come on before the Jumanji cartoon. You remember the Jumanji cartoon?
Whoa, core memory unlocked. As soon as you said that, whoa, dude. I haven't thought about that in so long. Oh my, dude. I wonder how many things like that exist that I've consumed or even like passively consumed that are just gone somewhere in my memory now. That's crazy.
They're locked away.
Locked away, yeah.
I remember so vividly getting up and watching cartoons on Saturday morning, and there were, I mean, at that point, Nickelodeon running cartoons all the time,
Yeah.
Disney running cartoons all the time, and new episodes like every day. And Cartoon Network, we didn't have Cartoon Network when I was a little kid, but when we got Cartoon Network, it was like, oh my god, they got Pokemon on this? Oh, I'm set. But I loved Saturday morning because it was stuff that wasn't on any other channel. It wasn't like, oh, Static Shock is on, WB in the morning on Saturday, and then it's on Cartoon Network later. It's like, no, you get to see all this other stuff. Like Jackie Chan Adventures.
Jackie Chan Adventures, wow. Gargoyles.
Gargoyles!
Yeah. There were some great cartoons from that era that I don't know how a bunch of these hold up at all. I haven't watched some of them in decades at this point.
I heard Gargoyles still holds up to some extent. I don't know.
It probably holds up in the same way as the original Batman cartoon does.
That's pretty good. That is super formulaic.
It is.
The original Batman the animated series, it is like almost predictable.
It is.
After watching the first 5 episodes. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it is, but I feel like Gargoyles is in a similar position, just based on what I remember about it. I remember the animation looking very similar, very kind of like, I don't know, it felt the same. It just felt like the same show to me at times.
Wasn't there was an Aladdin show?
There was an Aladdin show.
And there was a Hercules show?
There was a Hercules show.
I love Darkwing Duck. DuckTales and Darkwing Duck.
Darkwing Duck had a really good theme song. A really good theme song. Darkwing Duck! It was so good.
Yeah. Oh, and the theme songs used to be so important.
They were.
Now they're all generic.
Either generic or so artsy that you can't like make heads or tails of them. Like it's just like some noises and a logo, and then the show starts. or that one cartoon. It's not a bad cartoon at all, actually, but that new one, Adventures of Gumballs, like that. It just shows the logo, and it's like, and then like the show begins. It's like, oh, okay, we're going right in. We're going right in.
What was I just gonna say? I was gonna say something, and then you got me laughing with the Gumball song. That show I don't get. Like, I don't get any of the new stuff.
I don't get it either. It's not like meant for our generation at all. But I recognize that it is of a high quality when I look at it. I'm like, yeah, this is a high quality cartoon, but nope.
It's better. I mean, it's better than probably what we watch. Oh, I was gonna say, one of my favorite animes and one of my favorite mangas is One Piece.
Ooh.
And I grew up on the fucking 4Kids dub.
Ooh.
And that is like notoriously the worst possible way to consume that show. Because they changed a whole bunch of stuff.
So, I haven't went down a One Piece rabbit hole yet because it's a lot. By the time I heard of it and was like, oh yeah, I should check that out, it was already... That ball had been rolling for a bit. you know? And it's a lot. Naruto's kind of the same way for me.
No, I have the problem that you have with One Piece with Naruto. Like, for sure. I will tell you that there is a project called One Pace, which tries to reduce the filler. And there's not like filler arcs, there's not a lot of those, but it tries to cut down on like the fluff. Like, I saw a One Pace one for the newest arc, which is Wano. And there's this isn't really a spoiler or anything, but there's this sumo wrestler fight. And in the manga, it was like 3 pages, right? It's like, all right, the fight, and then the hand fighting, and then the win. In the anime, it was an 8-minute section of just like, right? Just like back and forth, and like the people reacting, and it was just like, okay, the One Piece thing cut it down to like 2 minutes. So there are people that edit the episodes and reduce their runtime to make it more condensed, and that's a really good way to consume the show.
It's good for accessibility for sure, and that's my biggest problem with One Piece. I actually want to watch it. It's because I've heard from many people now that it's very good, and I should, and I probably definitely would enjoy it, you know. But it's just so much material to consume. It's just so much.
Yeah, and like when I was going through it, I started watching it from the beginning in 2016, and it took me a year and change to get to the halfway point.
Whew. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So, my favorite anime is Monster.
I haven't heard of that.
Most people haven't. It's which is sad, very sad. I'm not going to go on a huge rant about it, but I will give the premise that it's kind of like a reality thriller drama, almost, about a doctor in Germany who saves a patient that turns out to be a very fucked up serial killer. And the patient like obsesses over him, and he has to go on a journey to like stop them from killing people and stuff. It's very good. It's basically like Death Note, but for adults. Yeah, like just very good story writing. There are some fluff episodes though, like any anime. I think it's if I recall correctly, it's 74 episodes or 76 episodes long.
I really like My Hero. That's
nice.
like, that's my like. If I have to tell people to watch an anime, it's like you can watch all of My Hero Academia in like 2 weeks.
I haven't went down an anime rabbit hole in a bit though. Might be about time for one, honestly.
I definitely am like, I'm not an anime TM guy because I really stick to shonen, but you know, I also just don't have all the time in the world.
Right.
So I want to pivot. Not that this hasn't been really fun. I want to pivot because something I was gonna say earlier, but we got on such a hot trail. One of the things that's unique about you being on the podcast, so I've had people who I've asked, right, that said yes. I've had people that I've asked that said no. I've had people ask me, hey, can I get on the show? Like, when we can get on my episode, right? Like, I've had people do that. Mm-hmm. You are special because you had someone vouch for you. And he like wrote a whole paragraph about why you should be on the show.
Oh,
and
that's very flattering.
Yeah, he was like, I vouched for him. It was Quill and All the Fish for all the people that have listened to, or diligent listeners, previous guest on the show. He wrote like a whole thing, and I'm like, yeah, sounds good to me. I don't know. That sounds cool. He sounds like a cool guy. I would have had you on the show even if you were none of those things, but you know, since you are, I guess it makes it double interesting. I just thought that was a little funny moment. Like, oh, no one's ever had like their representative call me before.
Well, okay. So some history here. I'm a musician for a living. I have been for about 10 years. And the way I work when it comes to networking is if I know someone that knows someone that has worked with that other someone, I reach out to them and I'm like, hey, how do I do X or Y?
Yeah.
It's
smart.
Yeah, and it's just the way I've always operated, and it's worked out great for me, and it worked out in this situation as well. I'm very happy to be here. So thank you.
Yeah. I'm happy you're here too. I was introduced to you. I heard your name for the first time at a different event. I believe it was STAT 2021. Quill had mentioned you. And
could be.
Yeah, and then you submitted to Jerryade, which we just did, which was a couple of weeks ago. I guess might be a month or two when the podcast finally comes out, but it was a while ago. It was the beginning of January, and you had some runs that you had submitted, and I'm gonna check this. I'm actually gonna check this really quick because I think I remember where I've heard your name otherwise.
Oh no.
I know. Listen.
Oh no, you're good.
What the hell is? I just don't like a Wengus. I think that's my main takeaway. I don't remember anything anymore. I have such a bad memory. All right, it was not there. But. You had submitted Doraemon 2 Nobita in the Temple of Light. You submitted, yeah, I'll get to that one in a minute. You submitted Earthworm Jim 3D.
That run went so terribly during the marathon. Oh God, go on.
Hey, listen, we'll get to that. And you submitted Powerpuff Girls Chemical Extraction, which we also got to do, which was a nice incentive. So I watched all of your submissions. Because I watched every submission video. I think that that's important for organizing a speedrun marathon. I know a lot of times people don't watch all the submissions. I do. Unless I'm on someone else's staff. That's different, but on mine, I do. Right? Mm-hmm. So, I watched Earthworm Jim, and I'm like, this game looks like such bullshit.
Yep.
And I love it. I love games that shouldn't have been made, that have speedruns that expose the game in its entirety. I love that.
A run that shows the ugly truth behind the game.
Yeah. And then I felt the same way about the Powerpuff Girls game, right? It's just like, all right, this is it, right? It's a game. It's like, it doesn't take itself seriously. The run also does not take itself seriously. Right? Mm-hmm. It's just like it's a run and a game, because sometimes you can have a game that's like not a good game, but the run is like a run. Mm-hmm. Like, it's a hard. And I'm like, are you doing like this for the Barbie Pony Adventure game on Wii? That's a 3-hour run. Is that what you're doing? I don't want to be any part of that. Now, if the Barbie Adventure game was like you get inside of the horse and then like you zoom to the end, like that'd be insane. Right? Mm-hmm. That would get in the show. But a 3-hour... So, not happening. I am now seeing... So then I watched the Doraemon run. And I watched that whole thing. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what happens in that game. I watched the whole fucking thing. And I didn't understand anything that was going on. It took me a while to remember that Doraemon's a fucking anime. And I was like, this looks like if you took the characters from Mega Man 64, but put them inside of Ocarina of Time.
Or a very stretched out Bob-omb Battlefield. like very really stretched out.
Yeah, it's either the Fields of Hyrule or it's one big, long Bob-omb Battlefield.
Oh man, Doraemon's weird. There's that's an interesting kind of different tangent as far as runs that I do go. I've got a long history with speedrunning. I've been running since 2013. I've been in 3 GDQ events, 1 ESA. I ran Chameleon Twist in 2014, and then again in 2021, and then I ran Sneak King, like the Burger King game, in 2015 for AGDQ. I've always kind of had a habit of picking games. There's 2 kinds of games I like to pick. Games that I feel deserve more attention, and games that are getting no attention at all. And I like to pick games that get no attention, not because free world record. I could sit and find all kinds of obscure, stupid games to sit and just run once, and then put on the shelf and be done. I like to get one of those games and, like, optimize it best I actually can, and run it for years. And that includes things like the Powerpuff Girls game. No, it doesn't take itself seriously. It's not a hard run to do. but that makes it somewhat more interesting. I also like really short categories, super condensed, very fast runs. I really like that concept, and trying to optimize like a 20-second run or even a 5-second run. I'm like, ooh, that sounds interesting. I like stuff like that, but I mean like really optimizing like something inside of a window of 10 seconds. I really enjoy ILs as well for that reason. So, yeah, sorry, bit of a tangent there.
No, you're fine. Yeah. I'm looking through the games that you've submitted to other events, and Chameleon Twist stands out. That game is a good game.
Chameleon Twist is a great game. That was my first speed game as well, and it's the one I've ran the longest and continue to run today. It's so short, and it's so accessible. But at the high level of play, there's some really difficult stuff in it, like for real, really hard tricks.
I definitely am connecting with you on the like short but hard thing, because I play Pokemon Snap. I haven't speedrun it in a long time.
Oh man, I used to speedrun 100% on VC years ago.
Really?
Yes, I have a 28-28 and 100%. It's like 10th place or 11th.
You do
on the VC board, yeah.
God, you're playing it on the slowest version too.
Oh man, that was back before like so many things were understood or known about the game. I was just messing around. I just was like, oh cool. I ran it for like a week, like
yeah,
but it was fun.
You sure did. Look at you. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
But I do love Snap because it is short. You can do a bunch of attempts in a short amount of time. And, it is a game that gets incredibly difficult toward the top. Because once you basically figure out, like, the mechanics, all you can do other than that is
do them on the earliest possible frames, pretty much.
Yeah, and lag reduce. So it's just like, all right, reduce the lag, get better pictures, take fewer pictures, and don't spend a lot of time looking where you shouldn't look. It's basically all you can do. So it's interesting, and I do like that about it too. So on the other hand, I also like kart racers, so I play a lot of Mario Kart.
See, I've ran a couple of like subcategories that involve racing, and then there's one run I've started learning recently that has a Mario Kart level in it randomly. It's a game called MacBat 64. There's a level in it called Mac Race, and it's literally just a very, very bad Mario Kart clone level. But that being said, I've not really done a whole lot of racing games. I would call my overall propensity of games I run to be just miscellaneous, but with a slight emphasis on platformers, I guess.
That's pretty funny. I love Mario Party. I don't know why I love Mario Party as much as I do. It just does nothing but hurt me.
I have one Mario Party world record. Just one.
You do?
I do. I have the world record for Bobsled run on VC. Mario Party 2.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really random.
That's a hard record.
Really random, I know.
That's really...
It's a co-op run, but still. Well, I mean, you can't get record in that category without co-op. AI just doesn't know how to steer right and stuff.
Yeah.
They can't mash quite as fast and whatnot.
I have your note here for Handcar Havoc.
Oh.
It says I hate mashing.
I do hate mashing. Mashing sucks.
Yeah. That kind of just brings up briefly the turbo conversation that's been kind of going on.
Man, I'm so divided on that because if we want to treat speed, here's my take on it. It's definitely a divided thing, but if we want speedrunning to be taken more seriously, I think that using tools to make it more accessible and easy is a necessary step. If you think about any serious sport, and again, you can loosely call speedrunning a sport. Obviously, it is technically an e-sport, but you get what I'm saying. If you treat it like that, which is what it wants to treat itself as, athletes use tools that make their sport easier all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Does it invalidate the people who could do it well before? No, I don't think it does. It just, you know what? And the other problem is separate categories. Not that hard. If you want to have a category specifically for no turbo, do it. No one's stopping you.
Yeah, I think at the time when the conversations were being had, and the conversations are still being had, but I think at the time when they were being had, Twitter lacks the ability to have nuance. There is no nuance in a Twitter thread. It is, you are either against something, and you're against it for all of the reasons why the worst human pile of shit in the world is against it, or you're pro something, and you are pro something because of all the reasons that, you know, whatever that person feels like is who you are. So there's a lot of projecting, and I've said this to a lot of people. I don't think the answer is to not allow turbo. I am someone who cannot mash. I physically cannot mash with my hands. I can't do it. This is a biological limitation of the muscles in my arms. If I mash for more than 5 seconds, my arms hurt. So I can't do it. I have found ways to get around it, and people have taught me techniques that let me cheat and what all this, that, and the other thing. But at the end of the day, mashing is not the thing that I think you would want. Like, okay, let me put it this way. If the person that mashed a button faster won the Super Bowl, is that really how you want to decide the Super Bowl? Ooh. You know, it's like, no, it's not a skill that we would associate as being like so important and tangible that it would be the reason why a team like triumphed in the ultimate sporting event, right? Mm-hmm. So by that same logic, like, do we really think that the team that tackles better, you know what I mean? It's like, or, oh, if you can catch a ball without gloves on, it's like, no one gives a shit about that. So just let people that can't do it have the same advantage. Because at some point we're just talking about like biology or like, you know, disabilities or physical limitations.
Yeah, and it gets tricky though, because I mean, I guess the biggest problem is that the people who have honed that skill feel disillusioned by a decision like that. I mean, I don't know. Some people view it as a specific type of skill in speedrunning. Some people view it as just a hindrance. I'm pretty good at mashing. I'm not the best, but I'm definitely not the worst. I view it as a hindrance. I hate it. I don't want to do it. You know, yeah. I don't want to do it at all.
And a lot of games, like turbo doesn't even really make sense. So it's not even like
now. What about the thing? What about the cases where people can mash faster than turbo can turbo? Is that even possible?
I am not sure, but now in the inverse of that, I don't think you should have it be the turbo can mash faster than people can physically do. Like, I don't think you should have that. Because I think the line here is you don't want to create a meta that revolves around everyone having to go get a new controller.
That's also true.
As long as you're keeping it to within the realm, even if it was like, hey, we've created a robot, it does not run faster than Usain Bolt. Right? So somebody could run faster than the robot. You know, if that's the direction you want to go. And I don't say that to keep people out. I want more people to speedrun. I want people to feel like this is a community that they belong in. I want people to feel like that they're safe in the spaces that I create. But I don't want to make the hobby, because then you're creating a different kind of an accessibility problem. Now you're creating a cost accessibility problem.
Cost accessibility problem is something that's always bugged me. There was a debate that came up years ago when Narcissa started running on IQ, specifically.
Yeah.
Because it's like, how many people can afford this like random Chinese console, let alone multiple of them? Because the joystick eventually wears out, and the joystick is on the console.
Mhm.
I don't know. It was that's always been a barrier to speedrunning that's sort of bugged me.
Yeah, it's like, as long as you can get a reasonably visible copy of the video and you have the game, play it. Do it. Do it on emulator. Even if the leaderboard doesn't accept emulator runs, do it on emulator because it's fun. It's what you want to do. Right?
Start an emulator board.
Yeah, exactly. I had a category. I wanted it added to the board. They weren't going to do it. So I kept track in a Google Drive spreadsheet. And I asked people to run the game in the category, and they did, and then eventually it got its own leaderboard. You don't have to be on SRC to speedrun. You don't have to submit videos to anybody to speedrun. Just do it.
You can just
have fun.
If you can literally run a game, IGT, and take a Polaroid picture and pin it on your wall, just be satisfied with it. That's fine.
Yeah. Hey, listen. I got a 40 something in Mario. Okay, cool. That's really cool. I'm happy for you. Someone's gonna come along and say no vid, no did. Fuck them. You did it. You know you did it. Just enjoy it. I don't like the idea that I don't like the idea that keeps anybody out of doing it or participating or being good at something. So I want as many people to participate and feel equal and equitable and like that they're welcome regardless of who they are or what, disabilities or whatever, I want everyone to feel like this is a safe place and a thriving, progressive, accessible community, while at the same time just making it so that the robots don't take over the world. Is that so much to ask?
I feel like as a whole, this community definitely reflects those values as well. There's certainly exceptions. Let's not go down that particular train of thought.
Mm-hmm.
But as a whole, I would argue that, yeah, this community definitely reflects that. And it's one thing I've always really liked about speedrunning is, as a whole, we're just interested in the games that we play, and we want to know as much about them as possible. That's really sums it up, and we don't care where that information comes from. We only care that it's coming from somewhere and that we're all having fun doing it. And I've always just enjoyed that aspect of it because, I don't know, it's been really weird being in the music industry. I've been on a few international tours and stuff at this point, and I played with people from literally everywhere, almost. And one thing that I've always sort of faced is not like a what's the word for this? Not like a people are thinking down on me necessarily or anything like that, but more like oh they sometimes people poke at me, because of my accent or because of this, because of that. Speedrunning doesn't have that as a whole in any form. It's just like, oh yeah, check it out. You have this cool game that you're playing. What are you doing right now? What are you doing here? What are you do like? And I don't know. It's that's what attracted me to it in the first place.
And what attracted me to it was the idea. I don't care about beating your time. I don't care about beating anyone's time but myself. I like personal records. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I like, oh, can I beat myself? Can I do better? Can I run faster than my last time? Can I lift more than my last time?
What's really interesting is when you've been running for a long time, you get to a point where you start asking questions also like, do I want to do better in this particular thing? Or do I want to move on to a different thing and try to do better at that? Or,
Yeah. You've mentioned it a couple times. I do want to ask you about it. So you are a touring musician.
Yes.
What is your instrument?
Okay. So I play a lot of different instruments, but 95% of my paid work has been on trombone and electric bass.
Two very different instruments.
Two very different instruments. The music is written in the same clef. That helps, but I'll be real, I don't read music much anymore because you get to a certain level, people just quit worrying about that, at least in the realm that I've went into. You know, if you're in an orchestra or
Right.
something, you're gonna have sheet music in front of you most of the time, but not in my particular field at all.
So you play the trombone, right?
Mhm.
You know, I just think it's so funny. But talk to me about, like, you know, where did that start and how have you been, you know, you've been doing it for a while, right? This is like
Well,
this is your
I'm 30, and I started playing trombone when I was 10, so 20 years. Wow.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of crazy. But I started where most people do, just in school. I come from a long line of musicians in my family. My grandfather played banjo and acoustic guitar professionally. Most of his siblings sung and played instruments professionally as well. I know that we had an accordion player somewhere in there, and we had an organ player somewhere in there, etc. But anyway, I come from a long line of just musicians, and it was inevitable for me to pick up something. So I picked up trombone because he didn't have a whole lot of money, frankly, and my dad had a trombone because he played trombone in school and was like, "You're playing this," and I was like, "Okay." And I was a pretty terrible student at it for a while, but I had a very natural talent for it. I just didn't hone it at all. And then one day, someone took notice of me and was like, "Hey, you're gonna get private lessons, and we're gonna hone that." And next thing I knew, it was the thing I did. I was first chair in the state for 3 years in a row. I was in nationals when I was a senior in high school. I was third, actually. And then I got, full ride scholarships to a lot of different schools across the country, conservatories and such. And then went to college. College was meh. Played a lot. I was a performance major. I doubled in trombone and bass. I picked up bass at some point along the way, just as a thing to do that wasn't trombone, just to be clear, and a lot of other instruments, harmonica, guitar, ukulele. I play ocarina professionally as well, so that's fun. But anyway, went to college, did college, got out, had a bunch of gigs, started doing musical theater for a few years, did a bunch of tours with that. Got to be in this like HD filmed thing that's on this website called Broadway HD. It was for a show called Night with Janis Joplin. That was pretty cool. So you can see me in HD on camera playing in a Janis Joplin tribute show. That's frankly a very sad show, but good music.
Wait, hang on. Did you play the trombone in the Janis Joplin show?
I sure did. We had a 3-piece horn section in the band, which Janis is. It's weird because Janis Joplin herself never had a trombone in her horn section, but she did have 3 horns. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sitting here like, I know Janis Joplin. I'm like scanning in my mind of the discography. Like,
I don't think there's ever an example of a trombone player actually playing with, actual Janis Joplin on stage. I don't think there's any examples of that. Yeah. But she did have.
Does it vibe at all?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because she had a horn section most of the time anyway. So it's just think of the trombone as replacing the bari sax that was in the original section. Yeah, that's pretty much what it does. So that was fun.
So interesting.
That was fun. I had like on stage choreography, had to wear a costume and all that good stuff. That was fun. Nowadays I'm in a band and we're touring around the east side of the United States, and we're kind of dipping into the west a little bit later this year. But that's been the way I've made a living for a long time, is just doing various contracts for theaters and bands and touring wedding groups and blah blah blah.
So can I ask? So I'm gonna expose my own ignorance here. When I hear the word touring musician, I think of 2 kinds of like gigs, right? One is like, hey, to recreate the music that these people played, or like to recreate that sound, we need a player like you who can recreate the sound. So like, hey, we want to do, we want to have like a big like art, like rhythm and blues, like tribute band, right? We want to do like, like the Blues Brothers, right? You're going to have a horn section for that kind of stuff. The other kind is like, hey, so we're a band, and on our album, we have like 60 people. We have like 60 different instruments, right? And then like, but there's only 3 of us.
Oh man. So it depends on what you're doing. Like if you're playing, so let's say that you take a gig playing clarinet and flute, or Mary Poppins the musical. That doesn't necessarily. I mean, yes, you're going to be doing a very specific set list every single night. That's just how it works. But if you're, in a cover band for the Beatles, for example, you're going to be doing Beatles music. Being in an original band, which is what I'm in now, is a little bit different, which is one thing I really like. I have a lot more say, creatively speaking, than what I used to with what I was doing. And I can be a bit more of myself in terms of how I play, how I present the things that I write that the band plays, because I am doing some composing for them now. And yeah, I think that answers the question. You also mentioned though an album that has like a billion instruments but like 2 people on it. That's a very common thing in today's climate because of home recording getting better. You'll see some albums that literally have like 100+ instruments and it's a single person. There are cases of that. There are cases of that, literally. It's like a whole orchestra, literally a full orchestra, but it's one person can play all these different instruments. There are examples of that.
Yeah. Was it Chris Cornell? And maybe I'm getting this wrong. Was it Chris Cornell who was like, all of my songs, there's not going to be a sound in one of my songs that you cannot recreate on an instrument? I think it was. I think it was that way for like Audio Slave and Soundgarden is the other one.
Oh, yeah.
Am I?
Yes, you are correct. Also, another band that comes to mind is the Eurythmics. That's just 2 people.
Yeah,
it's 2 people.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
like it's crazy. Now there are some bands though that can do everything you hear. And you can do a lot of stuff with really good electronics, like a good electronic drum kit, for example. You can run all kinds of crazy MIDIs through the cymbals and different pads and such.
Yeah. What is your, like, if you were going to talk about your influences, like what acts, what singers, what bands, what influences you musically?
Oh man. It varies somewhat because can I clarify this question a little?
Go ahead.
Yeah, so when some people ask that, they mean as a trombonist or as a bassist, who do you like to listen to? Like, who's your favorite trombone player that influences the way you play the trombone? Are you asking that, or are you asking, like, as a whole, who are some of my favorite artists that definitely, like, are a part of my overall vibe and aesthetic?
Yeah, I think it's the second one. I am not a musician. I am not the musician in my family. I am not the singer in my family. But like, I definitely feel like there are songs and performers that I've heard in my life that influence me or contribute to my, like you said, vibe.
All right. Okay. So first and foremost, my first big musical obsession that I got completely roped into was the Mario Kart 64 soundtrack. I'm not joking.
There you go.
I'm not joking.
It's a good soundtrack.
I had a little boom box when I was a kid. I was about 6 years old, and I had a little tiny Fisher Price microphone that actually worked. And I hooked it into the front of it and recorded it onto an audio cassette while holding the microphone to the TV speaker. And I listened to that thing until it rotted, pretty much. After that, I got really big into the Beatles for many, many years. So we're dipping more into normal territory for listening habits, I guess. But I did the Beatles for so long. And then my favorite, though, I try to really, especially with my specialty as a instrumentalist, by the way, is improvisation. Specifically, I'm very good at being thrown into a situation with no reference, literally nothing, and then just told to play. I also have perfect pitch, so that it's kind of like having a cheat code for that, but unrelated. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, what were we talking about? I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about your favorite, after the Beatles.
Yes, my absolute favorite is Supertramp. Wow.
Okay.
Yes, I know, very unconventional choice. But I I really like their songwriting. The most famous song of theirs is the song "Give a Little Bit," which is that song you hear at every charity event ever. Probably one of their worst songs. That's how it usually works.
Yeah, right. The one that catches fire.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. I've heard so many people say that they don't like the Beatles. And every time that I hear that, I tell them, the Beatles were like 4 different bands.
That's true.
Like, it's so hard to lay out that blanket statement. Now, do you not like the just like, I'm gonna be your lover, baby, I'm gonna be your man? Like, is that like your thing? Like, you just don't like that, like, you know, that like underground, like, you know, like literally in like a brick like alcove, like rock and roll style, right? Are you saying that you don't like the psychedelic shit, right? But yeah, it is funny. What I was thinking of,
Yeah, that
like,
there's a Beatles song for just about everybody. You know?
yeah,
Because there's so many different styles of music going on. Like, you can find everything from polka to avant-garde nonsense to, like, literally every genre is covered in there somewhere other than maybe, like, disco or Motown.
yeah, right. I mean, they don't have that, like, they don't have that ability, right? It's so funny though. What is your favorite? If I was to like put you up against the firing squad and was like, I won't shoot you if you tell me your favorite Beatles song.
Oh, I was hoping you'd ask which album, but song is fine.
You can. Hey, listen.
You
can say the album.
It's harder to narrow down a song though. That's my problem here. Probably I'm So Tired.
That's my fucking favorite. Are you kidding?
I'm not kidding. It changed.
That's my favorite song.
It ironically switches between that one and I'm Only Sleeping about once every other year. So, so the 2 ones that are related to sleeping for whatever reason, but still.
I love that. Is my favorite fucking song.
I wish it were longer sometimes, and then I'm like, you know what? No, it needs to be this length. And then I'll go back to being like, man, I wish this song were longer. You know, because it's only like what, 1 minute and 53 seconds or something like that.
Yeah, it's not that long.
Super short.
I think the White Album's pretty good. I mean, it has some of that, like, shit, I don't understand why it's on the record kind of stuff, but...
Yeah. In particular, Wild Honey Pie is probably one of the strangest tracks the Beatles ever did. Like, most people are like, oh, Revolution 9. Whatever. That's just people experimenting. Wild Honey Pie, on the other hand, I don't know what that was about. And I still don't, and I don't want to know.
It's so funny because you can, like, if you played a bunch of songs from the Beatles and you were like, okay, who are all these songs by? And the people didn't know, they wouldn't assign the Beatles as the artist for all those songs, right? Like, if you just play through the discography, because I think, like, especially, like, as they got older, John and Paul and George don't sound the same.
Not at all. Especially Paul.
Especially Paul. But Paul
Ringo
had
sounds exactly the same still.
Yeah.
He's aged
fucking
like,
Ringo, dude.
Like, I don't know, he's aged like fine whiskey or something. It's kind of crazy. He looks almost the same.
I hate Ringo as a songwriter. And a singer. I hate everything about Ringo Starr. And I don't hate everything about Ringo Starr. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the Beatles, but when there was something for like the Hall of Fame, like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it was a tribute to Ringo Starr. And so they have all the biggest bassists, you know, they have Questlove out there, they got Dave Grohl, right? And they're talking about like, oh yeah, you know, he was able to get a whole room captivated, and they do the fucking like just the fucking drum kick from Come Together. And I'm like, does that mean he's a genius? Right? It's like, or is that song just that good? Right? Or like, oh yeah, it sounds different when you go around on the left because he's left-handed. And I'm like, yeah, I guess. You know, it's just like, it doesn't resonate with me because all I hear is like, in the town where I was born,
or
right?
Yeah, or good night, sleep tight.
Did you see the Beatles documentary that was on Disney Plus?
I've meant to watch it a few times, but I'm kind of afraid to. See, I've read the whole Beatles anthology and stuff. They're not going to show me anything I don't know. I know that's maybe kind of conceited to say. I'm just like, but
it wasn't bad though. I mean, it's cool footage. It's cool to see stuff. And the one thing that I'll say is that there's a point where that Ringo is like just pitching, and he's like, "I'm on a trip on an ocean liner, taking a trip down to Carolina," and I'm like,
Carolina.
This is the song. This is the song. And then he explains it. He's like, "Oh yeah, like California, like." He's like, "Oh, yeah, this no good, but Carolina,
That's something. Okay, that's something that's always got under my skin is when an artist intentionally pronounces a word wrong for the sake of making it rhyme or like fit a particular type of stanza or something. So another good example in the Beatles of that is when in the song "Till There Was You," there's that line, "And I never saw them winging." Oh. I'm just like, oh, that's so bad. Another example, I forget what artist it is. I feel like it's Celine Dion, but I'm probably wrong. It's like, she's like, "You live, you lurve." Instead of saying love, she says lurve. And I'm just like, stop doing that. You're butchering the English language so bad. Like,
it hurts. Just let it not rhyme.
Just let it not rhyme. Yeah.
Man, I have a very like all over the place kind of palette, you know. It's like I really like a lot of different music, and right now I'm in my 70s soul vibe.
Ooh.
And there's only you know like Lou Rawls, you know, I got like a little Aretha Franklin in there, you know,
nice.
I got hang on, I got a whole playlist. But anyway, so I've been really digging it, and like, you know, it's like so like just like music from like, it just speaks to me, right? And I swear to God, there's a one thing that popped in there, and I'm not taking it out because it for some reason just works, even though it's totally different. And the Carpenters have snuck into that playlist.
Oh, let me get which song?
Let's see.
It's Close to You, isn't it?
I've only just begun.
Okay.
And Close to You.
Oh yeah.
And Top of the World.
So
I got 3 Carpenter songs in there.
There are a few really good versions of Close to You floating around out there, music wise. It's a song that's been remade a lot by a lot of different artists, and there's some really cool versions.
Yeah. There was hang on. I forget the quote. There was a quote from someone like really like you would consider like one of the best drummers of all time. And he was just like, you know, the best drummer in the world in whatever. She died when she was 32. Oh my God. I forgot about that. But it's like the best drummer in the world from 1969 to 1983 was Karen Carpenter. Insane to think about.
I can't disagree with that in a sense. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, there were that was a pretty wild time for drummers, though.
I mean, yeah. I mean, once you start, maybe like when did she become the front woman? Like late 70s, I guess, because she like switched.
I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head. I don't know a whole lot of the Carpenters' history.
She was anorexic and she died of fucking heart failure.
That's sad. That's really sad.
All of the Carpenters' music is sad.
I mean, yeah, true.
Right? Except that one song. Like, even like the stuff that isn't sad is still sad.
You see that a lot in the music industry, though. Just these sort of like, I don't know. I think part of it's just because people like that are in the public eye a bit more, and people take more notice. Oh, so and so died, or this or that. But I don't know. You seem to see a lot. Like, well, I mean, heck, we were talking about Janis Joplin earlier. Very good example. Just drank herself to death, and then etc. Heroin specifically.
I think that part of it is, and maybe I'm, I don't know, but I think part of it, especially like recently, is that like it's the same thing with NFL players where you give them a ton of money and they are most of the time, young black men who didn't finish college, and you're about to give them more money than like they've ever seen, and like you don't tell them how to manage it. Like you don't give them the tools, to like, okay, here's what you do, right? And you have to really hope that like whoever you hire to do it isn't going to screw you over. But you spend all of that time under the microscope. You spend all that time growing up under the public spotlight. And mistakes that you or I would make, and it's just like, hey, look, you live and you learn. For them, it's the news, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Like
that's
and
very
so
true.
they have to grow up and they have to navigate a completely different world than we ever will. They have to do it in front of everybody. And if you would think back to like the worst night of your life where you made the worst decision and things could have gone one way or they could have gone another way, and thank God they went the way that it went so that you're here talking with me and I'm here talking with you. If they had went the other way or they were publicly broadcasted, there's no way that you'd be the same person, right?
Yeah.
It's just all different. And, we don't prepare people for that. Like, man, like Richard Carpenter was addicted to fucking Quaaludes.
Quaaludes. Sorry, I hate to laugh. Every time I hear that word, it's just such a funny sounding word to me.
Yeah, it is.
Man.
But yeah, I think The Wolf of Wall Street made me laugh out loud for the wrong reason. But it is that way, It's like with Britney. Britney had to live her entire life in like front of everybody else. And anything that she did wrong, she did have a meltdown, and we all know what happened after that. But every time that Britney Spears did or said anything, it was the news. I say dumb shit all the time. I'm glad no one hears it.
See, there was this... It always happens with those people who come out of nowhere, and then they get super famous very quickly, and then they just crash and burn. Ones who have a more gradual, like, realistic path. Mm-hmm. And then it's not to say that, like, somebody like, I don't know, Justin Bieber isn't realistic, but let's be real, that's not realistic. That's an anomaly. You post some stuff on YouTube, and next thing you know, you're mega famous, and you're getting more money than any 16-year-old ever. Like, that's an anomaly, right? That doesn't happen very often, but when those sorts of cases do arise, it always crashes and burns, like, very quickly. It's just like throwing fuel on a fire, and then it just like it consumes everything, and then burns out. And then they're like, oops, I don't know.
Think about all of the athletes that all they are told their whole life is it doesn't matter, just pick up the ball. Pick up the ball, pick up the bat, put on your glove, right? Get out there and play ball, right? This is really like a macro example of a much more smaller problem I think everyone can relate to. I was not taught how to balance a checkbook in fucking high school. They didn't tell me how to manage my money. They were focused singularly on teaching me how to calculate the area under a parabola and making sure that we all applied to high school even if we weren't going to go. Not how to do your taxes. Not how to calculate a tip. Not how to make a budget, right? Those same problems that they didn't teach me how to do that, well, I didn't have any fucking money. So I got a check for $400, and I wasted a check for $400. And then after I did that a couple times, I learned, okay, don't burn it this time. You have to eat and put gas in your car. Except, apply that same situation to the athletes and the people that have this raw talent. Apply that to them. They don't have any, they weren't taught how to do any of this. They've been focusing on doing one thing. and then you put them out there in the world, and they get a check for $1 million, and I burn through 400, and they're gonna burn through 1 million. There's that famous story about Shaq, and Shaq got paid, and the first thing he did was he bought like 2 supercars. And, like, he got one for his mom and his dad, and he got all this jewelry and everything, blah, blah. And then they had to call him and be like, the bank called him and was like, hey, you're out of money already. In, like, one day. He spent his whole signing bonus. And so they're like, we're going to take care of this for you, Shaq, because we know you got more money coming in. We know you're going to be good for it. But we're going to have to set you up with a financial accountant. Because... you know, in the same way that I spent $400 on whatever I spent $400 on, he blew through $1 million in a day. You know? It's just like totally different, like, scales.
But he didn't have to learn anything. People are like, oh, you're talented. Just focus there, focus on that. I can very oddly relate to that, especially because I feel like just in the past 5 or 6 years have things started to really stabilize for me. Part of that's just my career choice. You know, in the beginning, you're clamoring for gigs until you bump your way up a ladder. That's any job, really, in a certain sense.
Yeah.
But, like, it was sort of the same for me. Like, nobody ever... you know, and it's like that in college, too, because none of my teachers ever told me how to go get a gig. All it was play better, sound better. Play this song better. Play this very specific thing that I want you to play that you could play with your eyes shut. Specifically the way I want you to play it. Not the way that you feel like you should. Not necessarily be bad, but I don't care. You know, But instead of being like, hey, here's how you get a gig after you get out of school. Here's how you go find a job. You know, like, no one ever explained that stuff. How to network, how to, like, do any of those things. And it was very frustrating. Here's a weird observation for you. I see it a lot in fine arts schools, and I see it a lot in very niche science. So let's use an example of somebody who is I don't know, let's say that they teach classical sculpting in an art department at a university. And let's say that they get a good new class in of 6 new sculpting students. All those sculpting students graduate, they get their degree in fine arts, and they go and they become art teachers at high schools. And eventually one of them graduates and becomes the new sculpting instructor at the university. And the students that they were teaching in those high schools come up into the university to study sculpting. And those students trickle back down and then send more back up. See a lot of these like causality loops of teachers teaching teachers teaching teachers. A lot of those departments of like education. I don't know. It's a very weird ramble to go on, but I think that sort of extenuates the problem too, in a lot of ways, especially with athletes. Because I mean, they go to college for 1 year and they get signed. In most cases,
Or the high profile ones, because there's a ton of players in college sports that'll never do this.
I went to University of Kentucky, so I know all about high profile ball players, dude.
Oh, for sure, basketball.
Dude, yeah, I put it to you this way: my freshman class was John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins. I was in their class. I was in their class.
That's fucking nuts.
Yeah. So
that's fucking nuts.
So like,
I mean, and those two had it, right? And they were playing on
absolutely.
Playing on a really good Kentucky team, right? So totally get that. There's like this dude out there in the University of like fucking, Utah, who's never gonna play ball, right? He's just playing it for fun. Somehow, that's what he's able to do, and I'm so happy for that guy. But then he's gonna be like, now what? Right? Now what? For journalism, I was lucky in that they would send me around to like work and get paid for other things. And there's actually a book that you can buy. I have a copy of the newest version, and it just is every single publication that takes articles.
Wow.
stories. And it'll tell you, this is how much we pay, this is how you submit it, send it to this address, you can call this person, you can email this person, and it is literally the telephone book.
Just like a Rolodex of like...
Yeah, it is a massive book. And I would just write articles for all these like specific things, and I got really lucky. But nobody, once you get into a certain position, it's like, I remember I had a friend, he got a liberal arts degree. I'm like, what are you gonna do with that? And his answer was he went and managed a Panera. I'm not trying to belittle anyone that gets their liberal arts degree or anything, because it is hard
Managers of Panera.
to go from, it is hard to go from the degree to the job, and nobody tells you how.
It's true.
Unless you're going to be an academic.
Exactly, and that's why a lot of it just sort of self-feeds back into itself. It's like, well, the only connections I have are my teachers and my teachers' TAs/GAs or whatever, right? So you just feed back into that system as your career. And I see that a lot, especially in fine arts. It's very prevalent. And you end up getting stuck with, like, the music industry is very polarized. You have the half that's playing gigs like bars, clubs, arenas, venues. And you have the half that's stuck in classrooms. More or less. It's very interesting.
Yeah. Well, listen, this has been a really great conversation. I almost don't want to cut it off, but we're almost at time. I just wanted to take the time to thank you for being on the show. Thank you for wanting to be on the show. I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation. You are welcome back at any time. I mean that.
I appreciate it.
If you want to follow my guests today, you can find them on Twitch. That is twitch.tv/Kefka, KEFK14. If you want to follow them on speedrun.com and check out all their speedruns, that's speedrun.com/user/Kefka14, spelled the same way, KEFKA14. And you can check them out on YouTube by going and typing in Kefka14, KEFKA14. You can get your Kefka fix. You can get your Melon King tutorial. You can catch all the streams, and support a really awesome podcast guest. So thank you one more time for being on the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you to everyone who continues to do everything that you can to support the show. Remember to comment, like, share, subscribe, do all the things that you do so we can keep this podcast free and clear of influence of the algorithm. And come back next week where we're going to have another really awesome podcast for you. So thank you again, everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.